Hi, friends and family. For those of you who were able to make it to my art show, I'm going to do a quick little tour through the gallery here in the Fine Arts Center at Walla Walla University. I'm going to show you an assortment of pottery and paintings and drawings that I've done through my 4 years here at Walla Walla. So let's get started. This is the gallery in here. We can start over at this little pedestal. This is a sculpture called Archipenko's Cat. It's based off of some sculptures by Alexander Archipenko, and he would often do convex shapes when they should have been concave and sort of mess a little bit with typical shape perception, so it was fun to kind of play around with that idea. And that's the back of it. And I also did a more typography-oriented piece, a picture of a cat with the letters from the word feline in the background there, done with some gold paint and ink pen. And over here we have a pastel portrait of my friend Cynthia. I started on this last year, but I wasn't able to finish it until this year. So I feel like I went over it several times, I did many different layers, and I learned a lot about how pastels work. They're a bit like chalk and have a very smooth surface. You can blend it. I can even go back and rework it just looking at it here. And Cynthia's also doing a portrait of me. She's a wonderful artist, so it was fun to learn a lot about colors and shapes and forms from her. So here on the other side of the gallery, we have some examples from my printmaking class, and that's where the title of the gallery comes from, The Little Prince. So here is one version of a linoleum block print. I tried doing it in several different colors, so you'll see a few more later on here. This is a etched print called Blue Moose. It's done in plexiglass. You just scratch the lines in with a nail, and then you go through and lay some ink into those scratched lines and press it onto wet paper, and it leaves the image behind. Here in the middle we have a ladder that I borrowed, and it's displaying a few different examples of prints that I made. Here's another example of the ladder print. This one here is a little harder to see, but it's an embossed print of the flower. So if you just run it through the press, the printing press, without ink on it, it'll make that raised shape. Here's a very strange still life of tears falling inexplicably on a box of tissues and a bomb and a jug of orange juice, perhaps. Here's a tiny creepy hand. It's a little hard to see. And then to the left here, we have two examples of copper etchings that I got to do. This one I did just one strip of copper, and you scratch the shape into a sort of tar-like medium over the top, and then you put the plate of copper into acid, and it eats away the places where you scratch the design. And then later on you can go back and lay ink into the crevices. And here's a picture of Angkor Wat. It's a place I've always wanted to visit and to travel to. So hopefully one day soon I will get to see that picture in person. And here in the middle we have an example of a sculpture that I did this last year. I spent quite a bit of time shaping the hair and the hands, but alas, as it came out of the kiln, one of the fingers broke off, so I've done a bit of repair there. So this is the front of the sculpture. Here in the back, we have an example of a tiny man sitting inside her brain, thinking pensive thoughts. I thought this might represent the inner self. You could also think of it as maybe she has a certain gentleman on her mind. But also, when this one came out of the kiln, his little head fell off and fused right here. So this is his original head. I was so sad when I saw that, but I was able to sculpt him a new head. If that was to be barely pressed, it would probably pop right off. But I painted over a nail polish, and hopefully it will have a bit of permanence there. So off to the other side here. We have two examples from an oil painting class that I took. Oil painting proved to be very difficult for me. I don't think it came particularly naturally. But this was the painting I did at the very end, when I finally started to get more of a feel for the colors and how to perhaps take a more impressionistic view of landscapes. And this was just a picture that everyone in the class got to practice off of. And to this side here, we have an example of birch bark. There's a birch tree right outside the Fine Arts Center, and I got to stare at it for a good 3 or 4 hours and kind of try and capture some of the details in it. So oil painting is still a very foreign medium for me, but I think I'm learning a little bit more about it. And then here in the corner, we have a nature mobile. So these are all two-sided examples of wallpaper designs. And I wrote a poem along either side of each. So I can go through and read you the poem here. So this is called Lost in the Woods. The first line of the poem is, I long for adventure in the depths of my heart. As the mountains beckon from far away, I tie up my shoes and set out through the wheat and arrive by the end of the day. The leaves are brittle and dry, the twigs crackle with light. Death and life intermingle as one. The bark calls me onward, the leaves draw me in. The path stops and my journey is done. I'm abruptly alone and deliciously free, completely worth the infinite cost. I wander forever with no direction in mind. Sometimes it's good to be lost. That's the end of the poem. So we can start our next segment of the video in just a moment. So after the nature mobile, we come to some examples of pottery that I have set out here. These were used as serving dishes during the reception. We had cheese on this platter, for example. It's a leaf with a little mouse on it. And I have a coil vase here, done in red, and a little pitcher, an orange bowl, a warm blue bowl on the inside with some Pinnell copper glaze on the outside, an obsidian colored bowl here that I like to use for tangerines. Here we have a teapot that's done in a glaze that me and my friend Heidi made called Wright's Green. So that was really fun to practice our hand at making glazes. And here we have some little vases. Here's a sort of a teacup that I like to store my keys in, and a bowl that I painted blue with some cobalt stain and then glazed over it in white. And these were a little pinch pot project I did my second year. It's a bit in the shape of a fish, and I suppose this would be used for creamer and maybe for sugar. And then you could put some flowers or a candle in the tail. So next, that brings us to a pencil drawing of Botticelli's Venus. This one probably took me around 50 hours. So I had a lot of fun getting some detail in their faces and in her face there. And this is one of her handmaidens and the overall picture. And off to the side here we have some pottery done in Takahara Celadon, this beautiful light blue color. This is a slab vase. So you set up a slab roller and roll out some flat pieces of clay, and then you can glue them together to create any form you can think up. And I painted a cherry blossom branch on there and filled it with some flowers. And down below it here we have a teapot. The handle has a bit of a bark pattern scratched into it. And the lid has a little blossom as a handle with my little insignia there, MLM, and the inside of the teapot. And these are a set of mugs that I did to match. The white dots are made with porcelain slip. And there are 4 of those. So here's the overall picture. And we will transition into the next room. So here at the side of the gallery, we have some examples of a sugar and creamer set that I made, and a larger jar that's very handy for storing flowers, and a bowl that has some shapes carved out of it, off to our left, we will arrive at the red and black segment of the gallery. This was just a fun design project that we did where we got to experiment with doing a still life with collage. Those are just, it's called Red Stems. And in one design class, we were able to come down to the gallery and look at some work that our teachers had on display. So my teacher, Tom Emerson, had a beautiful pottery piece out that I tried painting here. I turned it into a bit of a collage. And down at the end, we had another design project where we were supposed to consider conflicting words and how they could be interpreted. So on one side we have humility, and on the other side we have pride. All right, now on to the other portion of the side transept here. In my advanced design class, we got to make children's books. So I wrote a children's book about a coconut who felt a little out of place because all of the other nuts, the peanuts and the cashews, they just didn't look quite like him, and he felt quite lonely. So he went on a journey of discovery to see if he could find his roots and find his family. Here's another picture from the book. At last he found the island where he came from. And this is the back cover of the book here. I got these printed with the printing company here at school. And the final product is complete with words. If you'd like to read the whole thing, just message me and let me know. This was also my first attempt at using the computer to go along with art. So that was sort of a fun endeavor. Within this picture, he has some books on the side that are all puns on different kinds of nuts. We have Pine Nut of the Apes, War and Peas, Grape Nuts of Wrath, the Cashew and the Rye, etc., etc. This is him as he's beginning his journey here. He floats out to sea until he discovers his family. But then he realizes that his true home was back with the loved ones he grew up with. The end. So that is The Lonely Coconut. And I have many, many copies of this, and I'd love to share these with you if any of you are interested. Next we arrive at a chessboard where I did an example of each type of chess piece that would be in a set of bug-inspired chess pieces. So here at the beginning we have the ladybug pawn, and next we have the spider castle, or the spider rook, and then we have a beetle for a bishop. That's his front side. The praying mantis is the king. The butterfly is the queen. And this little snail here would be the knight. So here's the other side of the display. And here's an example of a poster that we were supposed to do for a visiting concert. I love the song Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner. So I did this one in colored pencil, and I found this wooden background. I really liked how the curly cues on the edges kind of echoed the curly cues in her hair. Another project we had for one of the classes was to design our name into some sort of scene. So I think Marlissa's fairly clear there, but underneath you can also see my last name, Murdoch, done in jellyfish and octopuses. Do a 360 here. That's the rest of the gallery on this side. Now we come to what I would consider my favorite part of the gallery. These are some abstract sculpture animals that I did. We'll show you the most abstract one first. If you can guess, this is an orangutan, although some people thought it was a pelvis. The scapulas in back here, and the fur tufts on the side look rather jagged and make it a little hard to discern what it is. But once you see his face, it becomes a little more clear. And next to him we have a giraffe. which I had to support with a wooden dowel to keep it from collapsing when I was first making it. There's the back side of it. And it's really fun to be able to feel it three-dimensionally because it's different from every angle. This face is a little hard to tell what it is. Here in the middle, we have an alligator, which I'll show you from all sides here. There's his face. And next to him we have a larger cobra sculpture, which I actually did in one of my pottery classes, and I was able to get away with classifying it as a pot. So hopefully I'll be able to put flowers in it in the future, but you can actually follow his coil all the way down to the bottom. There's his face. And on the final pedestal here we have a dolphin crusting away. And the very first one that I made is this penguin. I was just playing around with the different flat pieces of clay, and when I put them together I thought, oh, that looks quite like a bird. Here I have a picture I'm calling Narcissist's Shadow because it is yet another piece where I incorporate my own name into the art. That was done for an assignment for design class. Here's another project from the same design class. It's a portrait of a Native American. I believe her name was Little Bird. It's done entirely in stippling or tiny dots. So I watched a few TV shows and just poked the paper with all sorts of different pens and markers. I don't know if you can really see how the dots sort of fade in there. There's the overall picture. Down here to the right, I have an alligator box that I also made out of slab pottery. And if you open it up, you can see the teeth. You could store your belongings in here if you want to scare away burglars. And the glaze on this turned out quite well. You can even see some of the lines that I had drawn in initially to look like alligator skin. So there's the overall picture. Here in the middle of the gallery, we have a thing that looks a bit like a sun, and I built it around a bouncy ball that I found on the side of the road. It's half deflated. All I had to fill it up was a tiny syringe. I couldn't find a basketball pump, so I just used the syringe about 1,000 times to blow tiny puffs of air into the bouncy ball until it was reinflated. And then I built this on it in segments. So I built maybe the bottom third and let it dry so it could support the weight. And then I build the second and third parts. And it looks cool from all different angles. It's also extremely satisfying to pick up. Then off to the right here, we come to the more outer space portion of the show. This is a collage done with various watercolor patterns. It's a little bit three-dimensional. It's hard to see in the video though. Here in the middle are some shoes that look a bit like Van Gogh's Starry Night. And my professor Joel had the great idea of calling them Vans Go after the Vans shoes. And here's the other shoe. And here on the right, we have ships from several perspectives, but they're all along the same horizon line. So this ship is actually floating in the sky. This is a submarine. This one's in the foreground. And they're all shown at different times of day. We'll pan over over to the opposite side of the gallery. There's a beautiful mosaic that is a permanent fixture here in the Fine Arts Center. That was done by the head of the art department in the late 50s. Now we come to the chicken pictures. So this one I might have to do another video where we can zoom in a little bit closer, but it's called Birth of Mega Chicken. So here we first see Mega Chicken being born in this sort of nuclear enhanced egg. There's a factory in the background dumping toxic sludge into the water. All of the fish have two heads, and pay close attention to that little shark vehicle there that shows up in the other picture. There's some nuclear reactors off in the distance. There's a space shuttle called Space Eggs. If Elon Musk liked poultry a little more, he might have named his company Space Eggs instead. We have Colonel Sanders in the sky. And all around the egg we have tiny chickens. One of them has 4 wings, etc. And here we have Cinderella and a pumpkin, and Humpty Dumpty, and then all the animals from Animal Farm. Here in the center of this display we have some pottery called moon rocks. I threw the pottery with really, really thick walls, and then I went back later and gouged out some of the pieces to create a multifaceted effect. Here's the second one. The largest of the small 3. And then this large one I made for my friend. That brings us to the second picture in our chicken installment. This is called Mega Chicken Takes a Stroll. And again, we'll have another video where we zoom in a little closer to look at the details. But it's just a giant chicken wreaking havoc on this poor city. And there are lots of puns that I tried to layer throughout it. And I will do a video right now where we zoom in a little bit closer. So here we have the face of Mega Chicken. People are trying to get at him with longbows. We have a tiny guy roasting a marshmallow above his abundant flame. And the announcement on the top of this skyscraper says, "The sky is falling." I imagine that flashing and spinning around in a full circle. This guy about to leap into the air. He can probably fly. And then here's a tiny lady trying to rappel off the side of the building, but alas, her rope is too short. Down below the Mega Chicken, we have police trying to stop the chaos. Here's that same shark vehicle we saw in the other picture. Here's a weird limousine that is only wide enough for one person at any given time. This guy's watching the whole scene unravel and just enjoying his popcorn. And the theater is showing a movie called Why Did the Chicken Cross the Road? Tiny man in the window, lots of people running away. There's some bird watchers with the Audubon Society, completely astounded. This is the Nugget Company. Theater, this man is praying to his chicken god. There's a man advertising for Chick-fil-A who realizes it was a bad idea. Here's a school bus. They don't really know how to spell at this school. Here's some people asleep at the wheel. A mysterious car, perhaps with the president inside. A VW bus that instead of saying taxi on top, it says tacky. A bug driving a bug, tiny cockroach. People running away, jumping into manholes, climbing out of convertibles. Here's a delivery truck called the Yoke Folk. KFC is rushing towards the scene, hoping that they might end up with some good chicken nuggets. These poor people are trying to get to the back of their car, and their license plate says help. How could they have known they would be in this predicament? This is a taxi that says dermy, as in taxidermy, and there's little animals inside. And here are some grown men. Their license plate says no fear, and they're both weeping uncontrollably in fear. Some little guys running away. There's a guy with a rotisserie chicken cart with his hat on backwards. And this is the Hotel de Pollo. Now I'll take you over to the other picture to show you some more details. Alright, here in our second picture we have a close-up of Colonel Sanders shining radiant rays down upon the idyllic countryside. Close-up of the Space Eggs space shuttle. There's an egg, a couple chickens, and some tiny human people. As we pan down, we see the nuclear reactors. We can see the crops up close. They're They're growing hearts, they're growing roses, they're growing caterpillars, giant tomatoes. Some people getting married amidst all the chaos here. This is Mega Chicken himself emerging. His tiny brethren are playing hopscotch. Perhaps those are his parents. Deeply in love, and the mother is trying to incubate the poor egg. We come to the river that we mentioned earlier that's full of toxic sludge. There's that shark car, two-headed turtle, some scuba divers examining the scene. A guy trying to catch some fish. You better not eat it. It's probably full of poison. There's a tiny turtle. A couple of people running through the countryside. A two-headed cow. Here's the book Animal Farm, which doubles as the wall that Humpty Dumpty is seated upon. There's Snowball from Animal Farm speaking to the masses. Boxer is also driving the pumpkin that Cinderella is inside of. There's an artist painting the nuclear explosion in the distance. How creative. And then we have some punctuation plants. There's exclamation points and question mark plants. And then the Loch Ness Monster apparently lives right in the middle of the scene. There's the factory in the distance. And we'll come last but not least to the nuclear explosion itself. Thanks for sticking with me. We're coming here to our last transept on the gallery. So just a few more pieces to be seen. This is a pastel of lemons that I did. Me and a couple of friends practiced with some pastel still lifes right after our friend Maddie died. So this was a part of our grieving process, and it holds a bit of a special place in my heart. She was a big lover of art, and it's always beautiful to know that we're connected to all of our friends through sort of a creative outlet such as this, and you can grow and bond through artistic endeavors. And next to it here, we can continue the still life theme with a ink and watercolor collage that I did for a design class. It's just a tin box and a cabbage. And then off to the side, we have my first attempt at paper art. So I cut out these layers of orange grove with an X-Acto knife. And it's fun to look at it from different angles and the way that the shadows kind of change the nature of the art. I love art that has more than one dimension to it. It makes it so much more inviting and fun. And that will bring us to another kind of fruit. This brings us to our next portion of the sort of fruit-themed art. I made these in pottery. We have a pear jar and a pomegranate jar. And the underneath of this turned out quite well. This glaze rarely works to this extent. It's almost purple. Sometimes it turns out gray, so I was very happy to see that it came out red. And the third set in the series is an apple pot. And believe it or not, this glaze, this yellow glaze, is the same as this green glaze. They look fairly similar in the video, but they're quite different in reality. And that was achieved just through using a different kiln. So it was fired at a different temperature, which made it a lot more yellow. And now the final installment in the entire gallery is this origami wall. So this is something that is interactive. All of the guests that have come to visit have been encouraged to make an origami butterfly. So each one of these has been made by a different person who stopped by to see the gallery. So every time I look at this, I feel wonderfully supported. And it was just so beautiful to see how many of my friends were able to come and support my senior show. And here on the other side, we have step-by-step instructions on how to fold the butterflies, along with a beautiful selection of origami paper. Each one has some embossed gold on it. And my handsome and intelligent boyfriend, Kevin, wrote out all of the calligraphy on these different steps here. So if you have a chance to come by and visit the gallery, you can fold an origami butterfly and add it to the wall. I would love that. And so last but not least, I'd love to thank everybody that helped me with this show. It was unbelievable how much help I was able to receive. My cousin Summer was here almost every day while I was matting, and she helped a ton. My friend Sarah helped with making the invitations and the posters, which I was able to hand out to people around campus. And my friend Mariah stayed up several nights and past 1 o'clock to help me hang everything on the walls. And my other friends Heidi and Paula and Kendra and many, many others came just for moral support to keep me company. And I just appreciate everybody that was able to come and help so much. So I'm really excited that it's all finished and that the rest of my senior year will be quite enjoyable and a little more relaxed. I won't be having to plan out an entire gallery for many years to come, most likely. So I'm glad you could all join me on this video, and if you've watched it all the way from beginning to end, I applaud you. And I will speak to you soon. So have a wonderful, wonderful day.